Hi, we're going to talk about why you finally need to let go of your ego and get vulnerable. I know there's a lot of talk about ego, but it's a great concept. But how do you know that that is exactly what you're doing? And why is this so wrong? Why is this so detrimental? Why does this keep you in the same loop of failures and relationships? Failing to be seen and appreciated and respected and seen for who you are. We're going to dive into this, and I'm going to tell you a story about a client of mine who finally had this epiphany, and he realized, wow, this would have saved me so much of my life. So if you're new here, my name is Arica Angelo. I've been helping people for over 14 years now. And you might have seen me on a show called Love Without Borders that I'm hosting. But in any of my work, if you ever need help, just know that there is support, and you can find it on my website, aricaangelo.com, because you never ever have to go at this alone. So a client of mine, we were working together, and he had found himself in the kind of ideal Western life, which was the president of a bank, was married, had children, all of this. But what he found himself in was in a relationship with a narcissistic wife. And so over the years, he had been kind of beaten up by her, not physically, but emotionally and mentally. And so because of the kids, he chose to stay. Now, you might be hearing this and thinking like, well, yeah, that happens to a lot of people, but why? And one thing that he realized, he had done some coaching with me, and I started talking to him about the power of vulnerability. And so what he learned was that had he been vulnerable and more honest about what he really wanted early on, he would have never, ever found himself in this relationship with a narcissistic person. So what happens? Where do we go wrong? Why do we find ourselves so attached to our ego? And then as a result, we get ourselves in very toxic relationships that become super entangled, that become very difficult to unravel and leave. And most of the time, when we finally do find the courage to leave, what we learn is we've actually lost pieces of ourselves in that relationship. So where do we go? So here's the thing about the ego. The lie that the ego tells us is that it's going to protect us. It's going to make you feel safe. So you'll see in a lot of dating, most dating is led through ego dating, trying to protect yourself, trying to project this image of who you fully are not, and trying to disguise the things that make you more vulnerable. So let's get some clarity on what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is not always sharing your deep, dark secrets. Like someone has to earn the space to hear that. But what the ego does is it says like, listen, just put on this image and let them accept the image of who you are, which results in you trying to say the right things. It results in you trying to show yourself as very strong and independent. What the ego does is this: it ultimately blocks people from seeing and experiencing your heart. And so one of the things that one of my dear coaches, a business coach, told me, she said, Arica, people will forget what you say, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And so the reality is, when you lead through your ego, people never actually get to feel you. And so what happens is you become another number in their life, and they become another number in your life. And so you spend the rest of your life swiping, or you spend the rest of your life chasing relationships, chasing love, hoping that this person will be different, that this will be a different experience. And maybe you get yourself in another marriage, and you're like, why is it that I keep picking the wrong people? I'm going to propose something to you that might be a little hard to hear. But if you can really understand this, if you can really face this, if you can come to terms with this, this can change your life. It's making this shift right here. And I really want you to hear me on this. When you realize that the way that you are showing up and presenting yourself and protecting yourself, that this is most of the time the reason why you keep getting the same results, the same failed relationships, the same people who you can't connect with, the same people who don't want you, who can't connect with you. When you come to terms with, I have to start either facing myself and realizing, okay, why? Why do I need to keep protecting myself? Why am I letting my ego run my life? Why am I letting it run the show? And sometimes we need to take a pause from dating and we need to come to terms of what we're so afraid of that we feel like we need to protect, and we need to address that first. And then from there, we need to realize, okay, if I continue to move forward in love, dating, in my relationships, from my ego, from hurt, from self-protection, that the ultimate thing is I am protecting and shielding myself from being able to receive in love. If you're always going through life and relationships like this and going, I need to look over and see who's going to hurt me next and what they're going to do. And are they doing what my ex did? And are they doing what that boss who told me I was always going to be a failure? And are they going to be like that teacher who said I was a loser? If we're always living our lives that way, we never, ever get to experience the power of love. But most of the time, we have to come to terms with what are the things that we're so afraid of that we are self-protecting from, and we have to address that. And if you need some help with understanding what that is, please go to my website, aricaangelo.com. Don't do this alone. Get some support. The power of vulnerability is this, and this is what my client learned. And he said, Arica, I will have to do this differently in my next relationship, because he did leave the narcissistic wife. And he realized that leading from his heart, as opposed to fear, which is typically associated with the ego, that when he listened to that, he didn't have to lead or live or move forward out of fear, but actually out of what it is that he really loved. And when he started examining like what he really loved in himself and what he loved in experiencing in another partner, that when he looked for that, and by speaking up for the things that he loved and he needed, if you met a woman and the intimacy wasn't mutual, it wasn't reciprocated, that he could speak up and say, hey, I really desire you, but I don't feel like that's being reciprocated. Can you get honest with me and tell me why? By being able to vulnerably speak up on behalf of his needs, he felt like, was he not only leading from his heart, but he was in the driver's seat. He was in charge of his relationships. He wasn't sitting around waiting for things to happen, but he could move forward. And if that person said, I'm just not interested in you, he could say, okay, I need to move on and invest my time elsewhere. Or it created a conversation where the person said, I've been hurt and I'm feeling triggered. Then that opened up a door for deeper intimacy so that he could say, tell me more. Let me see more of you so that I can be with you on this journey. Instead of just pushing people away or presenting an image that people want to see, he finally could be honest with himself and lead from his heart. And that requires vulnerability. So I hope that this has brought some insight to you. In the comment section, let me know where you saw this for yourself, where this spoke to you, where you might be leading your relationships driven by fear and ego. And are you willing? I want to know if you're willing to do things differently, to start leading through vulnerability, because at the end of the day, there is a love that belongs to you. I wholeheartedly believe that. It's why I do everything that I do, because I believe that we all, if we desire love, that there is a love that belongs to us. But as Rumi said, we just need to remove the barriers. The ego can be a solid barrier. So in the comment section, let me know, are you willing to do things differently? And if you are, check out my website. Make sure you also subscribe to my channel. Now listen, I've got plenty more to support you. So I've got this next video right here that you can see. And I want you to go and watch that next, because I want you to really feel like that you are capable to be in the driver's seat of your love and your relationships and your dating experience. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in my next video.